Welcome to Listening Ben Inman. So, Ben, it's been many years since we spoke, in fact. We have been in touch, but not directly like this, or certainly not in person.
No.
Where are you? Where are you in the world?
In Sussex, just at the bottom of the Downs, in a village called Ditchling. And I live in quite an interesting cottage. It's a shame it's not behind me, but couldn't really do it because other people are wandering around over there. But it's the cottage where David Jones lived, who was a poet.
Not David Bowie, who used to be David Jones.
No, that's what everyone says. There's quite a lot of David Joneses. There's also the Monkees lead singer.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. No, neither of them. He was an artist and a poet, and he lived here in the in the kind of 1920s.
All right.
And he wrote. He did incredible pictures of animals, which is the things I really, really love. And he also wrote an absolutely awesome poem called In Parentheses. He was in the First World War.
Oh, of course. He's from that generation.
Yeah, and it's one of the great poems on war. It's incredible. Yeah, so we really are I live with the presence of David Jones, and there's a big mural in the kitchen, which they've discovered and it's been uncovered. And
So did you know that before you moved in? Was that?
Yeah, because my partner works for the museum, and there was a kind of Catholic guild of craftsmen that all hung out in the village, and he was one of them. Eric Gill, the notorious Eric Gill. I don't know if you.
Yeah.
Just basically 2 houses up, and did lots of nefarious things in that house. And yeah, and David Jones was one of his kind of, I wouldn't say acolyte, but he was an apprentice really. And they all made things and carved things and whatnot. Yeah, so there's a lot. It's an amazing village. I'm always discovering amazing kind of little hidden away people that lived in little cottages and done incredible things.
So do you think there's a kind of energy to the place that drew them there in the first place? And is there something in that maybe that you responded to as well, or you do respond to?
I don't know. I mean, it's very beautiful. It's on the Downs. I mean, it was basically, I think it was Eric Gill who moved here and brought everyone with him. And they started this Catholic guilds of craftspeople. So it was pretty much down to him. And our landlady, she's amazing. She was born in the house next door, and she kind of knew everyone and knows all about the history and knows everything that's ever happened in the village. And I think she was the last, maybe even the last member of the guild actually in operation in the 1990s. She's a weaver.
As late as that?
Yeah. So it's a good place to live. There's a museum, I don't know if I said, where my partner works. Just got lots of kind of woodcuts and carvings and poems and all kinds of stuff. It's great.
So how did you get to be there though, in that area? Where did you grow up? Was this somewhere near?
No, I mean, I grew up in Surrey.
Oh.
And then I lived in London for about 30 years. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, I moved to Brighton with my partner who lives in Brighton. And then she got a job in the museum. So, and she kind of happened to overhear that this cottage was going, and we kind of leapt at it. it's kind of my dream place. I've always wanted to live on a common, at the end of a track on a common, and that's where we are. There's bracken and birds and trees and mud, lots of.
Well, that's been a common for a long time, then, has it? Because a lot
Yeah,
of commons obviously disappeared during
yeah,
the enclosures, but that goes way back, doesn't it?
yeah. I mean, it's in the Doomsday Book, I think.
Wow.
Yeah,
So it really
a
is.
real bits of the common have got a real kind of feeling of ancientness. It's not very big, but it's a little kind of jewel, really.
And are the houses in the village around the common? What's the relationship
No,
with the village?
no, we're not actually in the village. We're kind of the common. The village is kind of about a mile away from the common. You go down a big road, and it's at the end there. We're actually part of Burgess Hill, which is on the main line to London, and is rapidly getting bigger and bigger, and is actually in the last kind of couple of years has reached the edge of the common.
All right.
It's kind of moving apace, really. And you can kind of hear the bulldozers and stuff approaching through the fields, and hear the clattering and the kind of see the lights at night kind of getting closer and closer. It's kind of a bit ominous. I don't know if that's happening to you up there. Have you got the build thing up there? Or?
Well, we're still quite remote here. One of the things I love about Norfolk, and particularly North Norfolk, where I am, is that because it's a dead end, there's nowhere to go. The roads can't go through it.
Yeah,
So it's kind of kept a bit of its unspoiledness, or it doesn't feel like a lot of the countryside I find now in England, especially, feels kind of suburban. Like you
yeah,
can feel the city,
yeah,
the presence of the city is around.
yeah,
But in Norfolk here, it still feels like the countryside.
yeah,
And there's occasionally talk of like widening roads, or I think there is some plan at the moment to build a sort of bigger road somewhere. And mostly people resist it, and I hope they continue because you can't really see the effect of something like building a massive road until it's happened, and then you notice the changes that go on. But it can be quite subtle, but it's a change.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so I hope that doesn't shift because it's so beautiful here. It's
yeah,
such a beautiful landscape, and there's still enough of the sort of vernacular building. There's still enough of the flint and red brick and pan tile buildings
yeah,
to give it its character. There was a whole period of barn conversions and lots of second home buying, and you do get a lot of influence from London. A lot of London money has moved in the time that I've been living here, but it still seems to retain that essential feeling and character. So,
yeah, yeah,
but also it's interesting because it's East Anglia, which is an ancient part of Britain. Because when people first arrived after the ice retreated, this is where they were. So,
yeah,
the history of people being here goes way way back.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and you can feel that. You can feel that. There's also that. Talking of commons, there's a good mix of landscape. The sort of western side of Norfolk tends to be a bit more. You can feel a bit more the effects of the enclosures, and there's a lot more kind of straight line fields and bigger fields. But the further east you go and down to Suffolk, I think you get much more ancient countryside with weird sort of shaped fields.
yeah,
But we're kind of in the middle where it sort of starts to change a bit here, and there are pockets that just look like they've been like that forever. And there are sort of weird, odd shaped bits of land, and there's a little bit of the enclosure effect as well. But in particular, where I am, I'm right on the edge of an ancient woodland, which I guess has been there since the Ice Age.
yeah. Wow.
It's as old as that, and around it there were various plantations put in over the years, and then abandoned sort of clay workings that have become really interesting woodland. And we're really fortunate because the farmland immediately around us is all organic, and it was basically going through its conversion when I first moved here. So I have seen a dramatic change in the landscape since I moved here. It's amazing the effect of that decision.
Yeah.
There's so many more animals, insects, birds, flowers.
Yeah.
Since they have really wide headlands around the field, so you've got a big space between the hedges.
Yeah.
They cut hedges on a much longer rotation.
Yeah.
It just feels and looks completely different to the rest of the farmland that's just industrial agriculture. It's so heartening to see it, and to just know that some people at least are trying to do something that feels good and right and healthy for the land and for everything that lives on it. And it's great. It's such a privilege to be in the middle of something like that. I mean, I do sort of thank it, or give gratitude every day, because I walk outside and I just look at it and go, fucking hell, this is amazing. What a great place to be. I'm so lucky.
Yeah, I do that here. I look out the window and, there's absolutely dream birds that I couldn't imagine a million years of me actually living in a place where there are buzzards, flying over, and sparrowhawks, and kestrels, and just we've got a woodpecker nesting in the garden and stuff. It's just, I'm still, we've been in about 3.5 years now, and I still go out and think, oh God, I'm actually living in this place with these amazing. We've got incredible butterflies, which they.
Oh, you get the chalk, because it's chalk downs.
Yeah.
You get all kinds of interesting.
Yeah. We're on the low weald, which is clay.
Oh right, you're on the edge.
Downs are really close, and that's chalk, which is amazing. But and it's good because the soil is so poor. It's really hard to farm on it. You get the odd kind of struggling sheep, and there is wheat fields, but there's not that many wheat fields. But so I mean, it's improved. The fields are improved, but then they're not heavily doused in kind of pesticides, and I don't think, and stuff like that. And we're quite near Knepp, which is everyone's talking about Knepp.
Yeah, interesting. Have you had a good look around there yet?
I've been there loads of times, and I mean, I think it's absolutely amazing. I love.
Yeah, I want to see that. I so want to see that. I'm very.
I mean, when I first went, it was like you drive through. This is kind of big wall. It's like a safari, big wooden kind of sign with net. I don't know, wildlife on it or something. And then you drive down this track over bumps, and it's like I thought I was in the Serengeti or something, just kind of thorn trees and scrub and big beasts moving through and crossing the track, and it's a different, it's totally different way of incredibly interesting experiment, I think, and it has that thing which I once had when I visited a Buddhist monastery once, where a lot of the animals, you can get very close to the animals. They don't seem to be as afraid as they are. I know they are. They do get killed at Knepp, but there's just an atmosphere of a different atmosphere there. I mean, it's the sun seems a bit more golden somehow. So I go there. I go there a fair amount, and I haven't read the book. I think I'm the last person around here who hasn't read it.
You need to read the book when you're reading the place, right? That's the book.
Yeah, well,
that's the way to do it.
All the book too complicated for my. It was full of statistics and
Yeah,
like figures and stuff.
your senses know what's going on when you're there. You don't need any statistics to show you when something interesting is happening.
No.
I don't believe that anyway. I would
Well,
I can already intuit what it's like because I've had some experiences here in a very small way that have led me to believe that's a great way to or maybe the only way to truly live in a sort of symbiotic relationship with nature, which I feel is what we need to do. Because I've been watching like the scientists' approach to the nature reserve, and it's so bizarre, it's so disconnected, it's such an odd relationship that and the idea, it's well meaning, there's a kind of conservation idea, means well, but it's a bizarre sort of abstraction. It separates us from everything else, which of course isn't real because we're inseparable. We're part of this whole living network. And some of the kind of relationships and decisions and actions that are taken, you can see, if you're sensitive and you're aware and you're watching what's actually going on, you can see how it's not working or it's completely wrong. But because there's so much thinking gone into it and planning and ideas of what's right and wrong, the actual sensory experience of what's there seems to be forgotten sometimes. It's been fascinating in a way to watch how science works in a sort of conservation situation, and how it really is maybe more like a sort of symptom of our cultural separation from the living environment that we are a part of.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like the rewilding thing, first of all, I feel like it's recreating it, although it's artificial in a way, it's recreating a closer sort of version of the landscape as it was after the ice, because this idea that the whole country was covered in woodland doesn't take into account the massive numbers of huge herbivores that were munching through everything. And if anyone who's ever seen livestock get into a place they're not supposed to be, in a bit of woodland, they just eat everything. Everything below sort of head height
Yeah.
is chewed off, and any little trees are bitten back. And so that whole savanna idea of little clumps of sort of scrubby land and thorns and thickets of areas where that maybe the animals couldn't get to, and then bigger trees get to establish themselves and get big enough that they don't get killed. And obviously the lands, being pigs and things, are digging up the soil so your annuals have somewhere to grow. And I think you end up, to me, there's such beauty in that kind of landscape. I feel like it's probably deep within our memory as individuals. So when we're around something like that, if we're able to get past the thinking and really experience it, it would, I imagine, it would feel so right and good. And I'm interested to sort of hear more of how you experience that kind of landscape when you've been going there, because you're obviously not coming to it from your thinking mind. You're a bit, you seem to
Yeah,
be a bit more kind of balanced in that sense.
I mean, every time I visited it, I'm blown away by it. I mean, I went there at Christmas. When was it? I think I went there. Was it Boxing Day? And it flooded. They're remaking the meanders in the river, and the whole valley had flooded. And it was just glittering and gorgeous. Absolutely, I mean, it was absolutely stunning. But I mean, I am. I haven't read the book. I've got to read the book. I think it works. Just having looked at it, it does work at Knepp. But I mean, there are places where I don't think you can leave. We live on a small island, and man's been creating a lot of incredibly precious habitats for thousands of years. If they're left to rewild, we'll lose them, and we'll lose, you know, a massive amount of precious flora and fauna, because it'll just turn to brambles. You know, you can't leave the down. You can't not graze the downs. Have sheep on the downs. I don't see how you can leave it. And the commons as well. I mean, you know, Ditchling Common. You see photographs of it. You know, 40 years ago, there's no trees on it at all, and now, you know, it's mainly wooded now. There's a few areas that are couple of meadows, and they're the really precious bits where the really rare stuff is. So I'm not, you know, I'm not completely convinced about rewilding. But as I say, I'm pretty ignorant because I haven't read the Knepp book, which is terrible. You know, and the results at Knepp are incredible. You know, you know, most turtle doves actually increasing. You know, where's that happening? Nowhere else. Insects, you know, they've got 30 species of dung beetle or something. You know, it's you know, it's incredible what's happened there. But I don't know if you could do it everywhere else.
No, that's certainly not something that I would think would be a good idea at all. For the reasons you said, there's lots of. It's more about variety for me. It's different kinds of activities create different habitats, and it's more about the relationship between people and the land. I feel like if you really love the place where you live and you're fully connected to it and living as a part of it, then whatever decisions you make will probably be pretty good or close to as good as you can do. Because I'm on the edge of this reserve, and one of the great things about the Great Wood here is that it was coppiced for years and years, and that's why it's full of all the varieties of plants and animals, because it was heavily coppiced, and everything was taken out of it. You know, all the brushwood, all the timber periodically. So it was worked intensively as a resource, and that's why it's full of the variety. So it's not so, and that's something of the idea of conservation where they just freeze it and don't want people going in and doing things. I think that's a huge mistake. It's about having a healthy relationship with the place where you live. It's about personal local connections, which, you know, when you love a place, you're not going to harm it. You're not going to take everything out of it so that in 10 years' time it's dead and useless. Only people who are abstracted or distanced from a place, who are making decisions somewhere else about a place, could do something like that. Someone who lives in a place and can see the daily effects of what's going on and has a relationship with it just wouldn't behave in that way. And I think that is the key, is its reconnection with the place where you live in whatever way. And that could just be your garden, you know, but or in your case it's the common, I guess, as well as the garden. But well, you tell me more about your relationship with the common and what your experience is, you know, because these are all ideas we're talking about, but what do you actually experience? I'm interested in how you experience the landscape.
I mean, I'm on it most days. I'll go. You know, as I say, it's not very big. It's near Burgess Hill. Loads of dog walkers. Um, you know, but it's kind of magic. I mean, there are areas where you can disappear and you know, there's nobody there, and be alone, which is really nice. You know, there's nothing. I'm trying to think. It is kind of amazing. You know, there's snipe. You know, skylarks. Uh, yeah, some pretty wonderful wonderful things. There's a big pond, which used to be the local swimming baths. You know, kind of 60 or 70 years ago, used to have a diving board and an ice cream van, and all the local kids would go and, you know, splash about in it in summer. But there's loads of fishermen now. Yeah, I mean, I go and kind of I guess, just recalibrate myself there, I suppose. Limp around slowly, and it's a precious place, and I think it will be. It's a funny place. I mean, it's. I remember the first time I saw it. I kind of. There's a few places in my life where I've seen them and they've really leapt out at me, and on a couple of occasions I've ended up having really close relationship with them in the sometime in the future. And I remember the first time we drove past Ditchling Common, I looked at it and I thought, wow, that looks fantastic. You know, there might be snakes there. And, you know, 3 or 4 years later, we've ended up living there. It's a funny little place. It's kind of right on the. If you look on the map, it's kind of right on the L of the low Weald, and it's very low, and all the water comes down off the downs, and it's almost impassable. You know, in the middle of winter, it's just 2 foot of mud. But I like that in a way. I like the mud, the quagmire. And no, I don't. I should. It's run by the council, and I should be doing work on it, chopping things down and clearing things, but I haven't. But people are coppicing and stuff on it. Yeah, it's a lovely place. Fantastic for bluebells around here. I mean, just at the moment, all the bluebells are coming up. Yeah, the green hair streaks will be appearing.
Do you get brimstones? That's the first. I saw one about 2 weeks ago. That's the first.
Yeah.
We always get brimstone is like the first sign of spring for me.
Really,
in the insect world, and bumblebees obviously kind of waking up. But it's such a joyful moment when I see my first flash of the lime green brimstone. And then we get the orange tips a little bit later on. But there's something so. I mean, it's this is what fascinates me, and I want to kind of get into with you is somehow uncovering what, because we're sort of talking around the edges of it, but what is it about these things that's so rewarding, that's so fulfilling? Because it's a feeling for me. It's just such a good feeling, and a feeling of rightness, and it's so simple. It's what wants to happen. You know, it's kind of life just living, and it's so fulfilling just to see a butterfly or the first stitchwort in flower or whatever it is. There's something so beautiful about these things to me, and so uplifting, and touches me. It's very emotional, it touches me really deeply. There's a sense of rightness and a sense of goodness somehow. I wonder, that's kind of what I'm asking you, like, what is it about these things that moves you? Why are you drawn to this kind of stuff? What is it about the birds you're seeing, or the mud, or what's your experience? I mean, what are you actually experiencing in those moments?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds very grandiose, but it's you know it's I would say it's love. I mean, I think it's a connection with something that is kind of generous and benign, not always benign, and not always generous, but and um, serene and undemanding, and just kind of um, giving and good and healthy. I mean, I always there are certain birds that I, you know, if I go to a place and the birds that are supposed to be there are there, I think, you know, oh, all's right with the world. You know, if I go to a place where they're where they're there and supposed to be there and they're not there, something's amiss and out of kilter, um, out of, out of doing it. And it's great, you know, around here. You can go up on the downs and you'll see, you know, all the things that are supposed to be there are there. You'll see corn buntings, guaranteed, skylarks, meadow pipits. The one bird that really does it for me is whenever I see a yellowhammer, I think all's right with the world. They're here and they're doing their little song, and you get that to you know, the birds aren't quite so exciting on the common, although they you know, you do see there are snipe and some, you know, I find that incredible. I step out my door, across the road, and on the field on the other side of the road there's snipe. It's just, it blows my mind. It still does. Uh, but it's it's a feeling that's kind of all's well. They're here. They're singing. You know, it's like spring. You know, I thank God for spring. It's
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
happening again in front of our eyes.
Yeah, that renewal, it's so important. I think it makes life endurable, spring, doesn't it? Because every year you get to be reborn again with everything else.
Yeah,
It's so important. It's so important. I am biased because I was born in May, so spring is my time. I feel like it is the time. It is my season, if you like.
yeah,
Um, but I love it. I love the very first beginnings of it. One of the joys of living in the woods here and working in the woods is that I see the very beginning of spring, and it starts after solstice. It starts, there's those few days over solstice and Christmas when everything seems to sort of pause, like in between an exhale just before the inhale. It's that sort of feeling over a few days. And then straight away, you get those first days of January, and the light feels different. The birds are singing in a different way. And it's the very beginning, the very quiet beginning of the rise of spring. And I can feel it now. It's completely obvious. It's there right from that moment, and then it gradually grows, and it sort of comes and goes. You know, we might get a cold snap and it retreats again, and it sort of pulses its way forward and grows, and then you might get quite a still sunny day in February, and you can almost hear the ground fizzing as thing, you know, you can feel the roots starting to sort of swell in the ground, and you know the sap begins to rise in the birch trees. And then of course then there'll just be then we get the hazel, the catkins, which is this very graceful announcement, you know, very quiet announcement. And then you'll just see a primrose. And the joy I get every year in March, and you get that the grass starts to green a little bit more, and then there'll be a yellow primrose, and woo! I know I've made it. I've survived another winter.
Yeah, it's such a. I mean, I always get just a massive feeling of relief. Because there's something in me that worries that it's not going to happen. And
Yeah.
reluctantly it does happen.
Well, there's a blurring of the seasons as well. I mean, I'm saying all this, but also this year it was so wet here and unusual for Norfolk, and not that cold really, not many frosts, and the grass didn't really stop growing all through. I've got plants and things that survived the winter and are now happily growing, and they usually die off. So there's a bit of a blurring, but everything just adapts. It's only people who are slow to kind of update. Everything else living is just going, okay, this is what's happening. Let's do something else then. Let's deal with it. Yeah. So when you talk about you talk about love, are you feeling like the world is loving you, or are you talking about you loving it, or is it both?
It's both, I suppose. I mean, it sounds a bit silly.
Not to me. It's totally how I would describe it. I feel like I'm loved by this place, and I
I'm.
love it right back. And it's a love affair, and it has been for nearly 20 years. And it's a deep, deep love.
Yeah, well, I know you've got a really, really full-on connection with the place you are. I mean, I, I'm not. I'm not. I know nature is. It's disinterested in me. It doesn't give a shit about me. The birds don't love me. Trees don't love me. But in a way, they they do because they are there, and they are aware. They do know that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
They run away from you most of the time, not all the time, but they're aware that you're there, and they are kind of giving it themselves. So there is some kind of there is a kind of communication, although it's probably maybe a bit strong to call it love from them. Um, the there's a huge kind of abundance in nature that is just it's ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed by blackberries. There's actually stupid amounts of blackberries every year, far more than anything could ever eat. And it just seems a ridiculous kind of generosity for them to provide that amount of stuff. I mean, there's a proper reason for it, but it is kind of nature, giving, and nature is just endlessly giving. I think, really, in a certain kind of way. I mean, I find it's an incredible. I don't think this is true for everyone, but I find it incredibly therapeutic, and to walk through a wood. It alters my mind, calms me down. Yeah.
It's dependable. It's always there doing its thing. It's something I've sort of grown to realize over these years, how it's the gaping hole in our culture is the relationship with the land, with life around us, that we're trying all these kind of addictive ways to fill this hole, but all we need to do is drop down into our bodies and our senses and reconnect and have a healthy, working, living relationship with the places where we live, and allow it to thrive and be abundant in that giving way that you're talking about, because that's all it wants to do. Instead of forcing and pushing, just allowing more. And I get this overwhelming sense of it has everything we could ever need. It's just so obvious. I mean, even the fact that we're having a conversation like this and I say something like that is absurd, because of course it has everything we could ever need. We've grown on this planet full of life as a part of it, but we've somehow got away from that culturally for so long now. We've kind of separated ourselves and gone into this mental realm that's done so much harm to us physically and emotionally, and done so much harm to lots of other living things. But yet again, it's just another expression of the world. Even that statement, even this idea that humans have somehow done something wrong. We are the earth. The earth has created and produced humans and nuclear power and pesticides and Roundup. These are all flowers of nature, in a weird way. That's a hard thing to kind of make sense of. It's a bit of a paradox, but it's true. And yet there is this overwhelming sense of the rightness of a beautiful natural situation that is undeniable if your senses are open, if you're aware in some way. And it does feel right. And perhaps it's just a question of quantity of, some of that thinking and technological making and doing is good, but too much of it is toxic. Just as too little of it and no kind of interaction with the landscape, as you were saying, where it was just all left to kind of tumble down into woodland, would also be a kind of reverse toxicity. I mean, it would be a wonderful place, but and I guess maybe even that over time it would then balance out and animals would move in and the whole thing would recalibrate. But at least initially it would be a quite difficult landscape if we did that. Yeah.
I mean, I think the greatest human achievement in the history of man is a wildflower meadow. I think rooftops a cathedral any day. A beautiful. I think the shepherds is made. The rough, tough, poor shepherds made over a period of possibly thousands of years, made the most beautiful thing.
So the continuous grazing and the sort of extraction of the nutrients that sort of lowered the richness of the soil created these landscapes which were perfect for those flowers.
Yeah. So it's not just a question of us being separate, because we've done good things, made beautiful things as well. But I mean, it's I don't know. It's a really interesting question, because I know quite a lot of people who have no connection with nature at all, and they do fine. They're not interested. They get on with their lives. Some of them are actually positively cynical about, and they're my friends, some of them. So it's hard to. I don't know if you can say it's everyone should have a connection. I mean, I think they should. I think their lives would be enriched if they opened themselves up. But there are people who aren't into it, and seem to be absolutely happy. I mean, I don't know. Maybe my need for that is greater in some way, or I was brought up different or something. But I remember I took a friend of mine from London once on one of my favourite walks across the commons of Surrey, and it's incredible. You're in Surrey, and you get off the train, and you can walk pretty much for 3 days and cross 2 roads, and it's in Surrey, and it's just heathland all the way. He hated it. He absolutely hated it, and he was just all he could talk about the whole way through was that, this would be a good place to hide a body. This is so countryside is really scary because it's full of weird people and axe murderers, and couldn't wait to get back on the train, get back to Islington, and I found it really, really upsetting. I didn't know, I couldn't cope with it. I kind of.
Well, is that? It sounds like because this person is so in their heads that they're not actually there, that they're not actually having the experience of being.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
because they're seeing it through all that thinking. Yeah. They're interpreting all those experiences. So they've not actually been there. They've only been in their heads whilst their bodies were there. And I think maybe it's that. I feel like I don't feel like there should any that shoulds should ever be imposed on anyone. Yeah. But my feeling is that given the right circumstances, and if somebody is enabled to have their full presence, their physical, emotional, and mental presence in balance, they will inevitably feel good or a rightness from being in a beautiful landscape that's healthy and full of different animals, plants, insects, whatever. Yeah. I feel like that's a symptom of a condition of being so far into our heads, because it's the culture, culturally we are a head culture, we're a thought culture. Yeah, that's it's I feel like that's what it sounds like to me. I mean,
I think you're probably right. I think it was just so alien, he couldn't relax sufficiently to kind of see what was there.
Yeah, or I suppose, if you've had negative experiences in those situations, then that creates, your body's in a kind of fight or flight mode. That's not going to be enjoyable, is it? Discomfort. If you don't like, the rain or mud or dirt, even, of any kind.
Well, that's another problem with the countryside. It's full of dirt, which is really unpleasant to a lot of people, and it's a bit scruffy.
Yeah, it's a wonderful.
Getting used to. Yeah, no, it's wonderful. I mean, a thing I find is making me really angry at the moment is all this stuff about going to Mars, which is just, the big rage is to go to the most inhospitable. Let's go and live on the most inhospitable, barren wasteland in the solar system. It's just completely crazy. It's totally the wrong thing to do where we are at the moment. don't spend billions of dollars flying to Mars. Spend it here making life,
Yeah, fix the fucking problems here.
you're not going to be happy on Mars. You're
Yeah,
never,
no,
never
no.
in a million years.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's part of the disconnect and the kind of
yeah.
I don't know, yeah, the lack of
That's how far ideas can take you to Mars. And then you
yeah,
get there and you realize, oh my God, the Earth is so beautiful and nourishing and has
yeah,
everything we need. And this place is fucking cold and there's nothing here.
yeah.
And we have to bring everything with us.
You're all right. We'll go to Mars,
Yeah.
and yeah,
I get it though. I get it. There's also, the excitement, the innovation and the pushing the boundary and yeah,
yeah,
I get it. I
yeah,
do understand that.
yeah, yeah,
But I'm definitely feeling a bit of what you're saying, which is what if we used all our ingenuity to actually work out how to just live in harmony on the place where we are? That will be a good first move. When we've done that, then we can go to Mars with all our technology and we won't just destroy that,
yeah, yeah,
or take our problems with us.
yeah,
As somebody very wise once said to me when I was sort of talking about, oh, maybe I should just go to live in New Zealand and, get out of here. They said, well, that's all very well, but wherever you go in the world, you'll still be you. Which was a very, very on the money observation. You can't run away from your problems if they are within you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they're probably worse in a capsule and on on a planet somewhere. No escape then.
Yeah, Mars. Wow. Yeah, it's such a bizarre time to be alive with everything that's going on. But I do constantly get grounded by having this relationship, and I do feel a sense of the importance of what I've learned from that and how I do want to share that with other people and say there's something right in front of you or right under your feet that could give you so much if you gave it a little bit of attention and a bit of love, and it
Yeah,
would love you right back, 10 times more.
yeah,
And it's a very quiet, subtle, patient thing. It doesn't force itself. And I guess it gets missed a lot of the time because it's not screaming in your desensitized eyes and ears. It's just there being all the time. And that there's something so nourishing and reassuring for me in that. So the more bizarre and dysfunctional the culture and the way we're living gets, the more dependable having a relationship with the land and the seasons and the cycles and even developing relationships with individual trees or plants or some of the local animals.
yeah,
That there's so much value in that for me. There's so much consolation really for those kind of despairing thoughts I get about how messed up it all is. It really helps with all that for me.
yeah,
Do you I, I have this thing with just meeting animals is so profound for me.
yeah,
I'll be walking along and then there'll be a muntjac will just appear,
yeah,
look at me or just kind of move, and they're so there, animals, they are
yeah,
so utterly there that everything they do has a beauty because it's just completely truthful. It's so authentic, and they are so utterly present and within the place that they're in.
yeah,
I find that completely captivating, and it's really moving. They're almost like, I don't know what they are, but these experiences are profound moments in my day, and I think it's hard to explain that to somebody, but
Yeah.
so
yeah.
important, those meetings, and I feel like something great just happened, and all it was I met an animal, or a hare will run across the road and stop and do a weird move and then go back the other way,
Yeah.
and it changes my whole day. It will change me. It will. I have hares in particular. I have a bit of a sort of affinity for hares. I feel like if I was an animal, I'd be a hare. I don't know if you have that, but people talk about spirit animals, but this is my understanding of it, that everyone has an animal that they have some sort of relationship with, and often perhaps it's an animal that you're a bit ashamed of, because I remember feeling initially like, well, a hare's not, I want to be something a bit more edgy, but actually it's truthful. There's something about the qualities of it that are really me, and it was more like an acceptance of who I am that
Right.
that made me kind of acknowledge and accept that the hare was my animal, and then start to really love it because of that, just because of the truth of it. And so every time I see one, it feels like some kind of remembrance of who I am, or something like that happens, and I use it as a kind of trigger now to just, okay, go back to, ground into yourself, whatever's going on, remember who you are. Tell me, what are your sort of, how do you
Well, I mean,
experience animals?
yes. I mean, it's really. I agree. It's really something magical happens when you see a wild animal. It's magic. Um, Something kind of, and it's mysterious, and I think that's part of nature as well. There's this huge mystery about nature and uh, what is it and what's going on, and what are they thinking. Um, I got I read something by Freya. I can't remember her second name. The travel writer, and she said it's one of those things. Sometimes you read by writers and you just think, what's she talking about? But mystery is happiness is what she wrote, and I kind of thought that's not true. But I kind of think there is a lot of truth in that. I think you need um, mystery, and these encounters with animals are magic. They are really proper magic in the wild, and I always think the British mammals are magic. You see that in children's books.
Mm.
They're so hedgehogs and foxes and stuff. I don't know if maybe the magic comes from the fact from children's books. I don't think it does. I think it's the other way around. I think
Yeah. The
it,
origin is in the animals
yeah.
themselves, for sure. And
Um,
they're the animals of our country. They are
yeah,
the characters that inhabit our land and have done for a long
yeah,
time.
and I think they are in the national psyche.
Yeah,
I think there probably is a real connection with everyone, with foxes and rabbits and
yeah. Foxes are the most, of all the animals I meet here. Foxes I meet probably, that's the rarest meeting. But
right.
in all the time I've lived here, I've probably met or seen, as I've been wandering around, maybe 6 or 7 foxes,
Really?
and they've all been very different. Like,
Right.
one of the first ones I saw was a huge fox, really dark, like a dark brown, and he was kind of loping across the field like a wolf or something.
Yeah.
And I was so amazed at seeing it, first of all, and it was daylight, and it felt like it was a really old fox, like, the sort of old king that was going off to die or something. Incredible, but such a feeling, and this was from so far away that I saw it, but it was such a powerful feeling from the movement of his body. And I mean, I say he, but I kind of instinctively felt like it was a he. I don't know, but I sort of felt like it was. And then one of the other most kind of potent images is when I was walking in the woods, and this I sort of surprised this fox, and it was really close to me, and it was a
Yeah.
small one, and it had the most intense eyes, and just for a second, like a flash, like a flame, just kind of, it looked, our eyes kind of locked,
Yeah.
and it turned in this really tight sort of turn and just kind of disappeared. What, gone, almost vanished into thin air. But though that moment when it looked at me, I've never been looked at by anyone or anything so intensely in my life.
Yeah.
And I can, as I'm talking about, I can see it. I can see its face. It was such a strong image.
Yeah.
But the smallness of it and the quickness, and I felt like in that moment I'd sort of been shown the thousands of years of persecution and cunning kind of running rings around people, the whole story of man and fox and their troubled relationship, and how the foxes are still there, and mankind usually, when it sets its mind to it, will just destroy things very quickly. But the fox has been kind of fought for a long time, seriously, and it's survived. I've got so much admiration for that kind of,
Yeah.
the toughness and the sort of the way they've moved into the cities. That is like they've upped their game, because they've realized, well, the city's easy. We can really live a good life in the city, and nobody will do any. We can walk around bold as brass. Nobody will do anything about it. They'll love us for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those meetings.
Yeah, they are. I mean,
Mm.
did you hear about the my sisters?
No, you said a sort of cryptic message, but I don't know the story. So tell us, what is it?
I mean, I won't. I'll leave her to tell you the whole story. But basically, wolves have showed up.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
quite dramatic.
That's
But
a whole other level, right? Wolves.
but but it's to say it's what you're saying about foxes. I mean, Italian wolves. I mean, I once saw an Italian wolf on a mountain, and I went nuts because I couldn't believe I'd seen a wild wolf, and it was on a very remote kind of
I
rural.
didn't even know there were wolves in Italy. That's
Well,
amazing.
yeah, and that's just, it's absolutely incredible that they must be Italian wolves must be the most wily creatures in on the planet. They've survived in Italy, which is full of hunters. They're everywhere, shooting, blasting everything. They've survived there, and now they're doing really well. They're spreading, and they've spread. They're at my sister's, which is near Pisa. It's not wilderness.
Mm.
It's kind of vineyards and stuff. And wolves were exterminated in the United States, and a massive country with huge mountains, areas of wilderness. They were made extinct. There weren't any wolves left in that huge country. Yet in Italy, this little country, they persisted,
I had no
all the
idea.
time, you know, getting up to their tricks and stuff. It's just, it's amazing. It's really amazing. And it wasn't entirely a happy story what happened at my sister's house. But yeah, I'll leave her to talk about that. But
Mm.
yeah, and I kind of, I think wild animals are also they've got to be wild, really. If you see something in a zoo,
Yeah.
it's doesn't have that same
It's
magic.
tragic. It's not that it doesn't have. For me, anything like that in the zoo, it's so depressing if I see something like that. If it's
Yeah,
not where it needs to be.
yeah. And
I find it
it's been
increasingly difficult, just the whole pets thing, even though like there's sort of domesticated animals that have been with humans for a long time. That the longer I've lived here, the less I've wanted anything to do with that, because
I was going to ask you
being
that
an
question.
animal in the wild is such a different experience.
Yeah, you haven't got a dog.
No, I did have a dog, But after the dog died, I just felt like that was it. I don't want to do that anymore because it just doesn't seem right. I want to meet animals on their terms as an equal in a way. I don't want that sort of weird, compromised, sort of emotional slavery, whatever it is. It's a very troubling relationship that we have. And I can't speak for everyone. For me, it just wasn't right. Some people, I know people who are really deeply connected to their pets, and it's a different thing. And there is, that does seem like a wholesome thing in its own way. But for me, the wild animals, that's how I want to meet animals. I want to just by chance, that mystery you talk about, they carry the mystery, and they just remind you life is mystery. It's like life comes up and says, this is life. Oh shit, I forgot. I was off in my head somewhere. I forgot what life actually was. It's this profound, mysterious, beautiful thing that's just there all the time.
Yeah.
Waiting to
They're
happen.
there, and they're always out there, kind of, you secretly in their secret places, hidden away, getting on with their little strange lives. And that's, I don't know, it's just a wonderful thing to know that
Yeah,
that's happening.
it's just good to know that they're there. Even I don't want anything from them. It's just good to know that things are going on that are not controlled by people. That there's more, the richness of that. I think those chance meetings. This is what makes life beautiful. Is those kind of unplanned things that happen, like those meetings, or the first butterfly, or any of those things that when everything's controlled and thought out and preconceived, it's dead. There's a death in all of that for me. The randomness and the riskiness, even, we seem to be totally risk averse and death averse, and that we're robbing ourselves of the richness of life. The safer we are, the more dead we are. That's how it feels to me.
I discovered that guy. I clicked on one of your links, the Death Man. I got a bit obsessed with him for a while. John, what's his name?
Who's this? I don't know what you're talking about.
You sent a link that I clicked on, and he's called Mr. Death. He says he's trying to get us all accustomed to living with the knowledge of death. He's American.
Oh, okay. Somebody who's worked with dying people. Yeah, okay. Was it Zach Bush? Maybe was he called Zach Bush? American guy, lives in Hawaii. He's a doctor. Oh no, it was I know who you mean. The Canadian. What's he called?
Really
I've forgotten his name now.
Mm.
It'll come to me. Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, he's pretty incredible.
Jenkinson, Stephen Jenkinson. Yeah.
I read a really strange book about a woman who, she's called Chris Ferris. That's her pseudonym, and she had a bad back, and she couldn't sleep, so she used to get up at night and kind of just walk around the fields. And she ended up having the most incredible relationship with all the animals that lived in her locality. And she'd go and play with the badgers, and she'd pull thorns out of the badgers' feet, and the foxes would come and crawl all over her, and it's a really, you read this book, it's a it's a funny book. It's not the best written book I've ever read. I'll say that, but it's astonishing what I couldn't believe what her relationship with the wild animals was. But I think it's true. I think she completely gained the trust of all the animals that lived in her it's like Dr. Dolittle or something. And
Well, perhaps a bit like the Buddhist place you went,
yeah,
where over time
yeah,
they develop this kind of, because they're so, one, they're really present, they're there, and they're not behaving in a ridiculous, damaging, threatening way, or
yeah,
so there just becomes this getting used to each other.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
I had a very incredible, because I've been waiting for the encounter with a wild animal that isn't afraid of me, kind of all my life, and I've had a I've had a I've had a couple of times it's happened, but I had an amazing time a couple of years ago in Wiltshire where I two deer actually came completely unprompted right up to me and touched me and then went off, and that was really fairy tale-y. I mean, it was kind of, why did they do that? And I could not get my head around it. How it happened, how it was really astonishing. They kind of, I, I I was sitting under a tree and I kind of fell asleep and woke up to hear this rustling in the bushes, and two roe deer came out and just kind of came right up to me, and I had my binoculars down on my side and just bent down and sniffed the binoculars, and then turned around and walked off. It was really, really kind
Were
of.
you, when you just woken up? So were you in a very relaxed, kind of sleepy state anyway?
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. I was thinking I might have been in a place that was so kind of remote that, and this it was hot. It was so hot, and I'd been eating sardines as well, so maybe I just smelt of. I didn't smell of
A
humans.
weird fish under the tree.
Yeah,
Let's go and have a sniff.
yeah, a combination of all the factors made them not
Mm.
afraid, or made them think I was something else or something. So
I had a standoff with a row buck one year, like where it was barking in the woods,
yeah,
like territory sort of issues or something. And I was sort of walking and I got quite close, and he saw me, and he just stood there and really kind of was
yeah,
giving, it wasn't just like looking at me, it was giving out like challenging sort of
yeah, yeah,
testing vibes and body language and moving.
yeah,
And I walked a bit closer and it was like, okay, we're up, it was like, I mean, it must have been during the rut or something that time, because I then sensed that, oh, I'm actually another male, and we're gonna have some
yeah.
sort of fight about the territory. And that's what it was like. And this went on for ages.
Wow,
And I was feeling threatened by it.
it's pretty
But I
scary.
was also kind of sort of intrigued and a bit excited and like, well, okay, let's play this game. And I would kind of go forward, and we got quite close until finally his nerve went and he just pounded through away. But there was a lot of kind of barking and a lot of, really just like fronting like that.
Yeah,
It was amazing.
it's
And
quite.
the only other time I've been that close to a male was a red stag, like really early on in my time here. And it was purely by accident. Again, one of those situations where I just came round the edge of some quite dense trees, and there was a red stag so fucking tall. I mean, those things they're bigger than horses. That's how it feels when you're near to one. This enormous stag,
Wow.
completely surprised to see me, probably thought, he knew his way around the woods and wouldn't get surprised like that. So was was shocked, and I was shocked, and thinking, in those moments afterwards, thinking that thing could have just killed me, with this massive rack of antlers.
Yeah.
But it just freaked out and almost like knocked the trees down. And the sound, I'll never forget two things. There was this incredible sight, but more powerful than that was the sound of the weight of it as it thundered through on the ground, like the pounding of the ground and the breaking of bracken and brambles, and then the smell, this kind of really strong smell of the deer. Incredible experience.
Deer stags are massive, aren't they? They can be.
Yeah.
It's fine. You got red deer up there.
Yeah.
You got all the deer up there.
We have in these, or coming through, because the red deer seem to be much more transitory. They kind of move around a lot, and very seasonal. We always have muntjacs about, and roe deer are very sort of territorial here in small groups, little family groups usually, or kind of females and some young or whatever. So we get a lot, yeah. We and that there are. I don't know if there are fallow deer around in Norfolk, but I haven't seen any here. But we get huge herds of red deer.
Wow, I didn't know they were.
You'll see in the bit of woodland I manage. I've often been driving along in the tractor in the winter, and I'll just catch something out the corner of my eye, and then I stop, and I realise there's like 40 deer in the trees all just looking at me. They're all kind of peeking out as I'm going past. But in that way, I think because they sort of sense, or maybe they know me because they've seen me going through there a few times, I can just carry on driving, and they don't spook, they don't run away, they'll just sort of watch me. And only if I make some moves towards them, or will they start to kind of move along. But yeah, big herds we get, especially, well, I see them more in the winter because I'm more in the woods, but I think they gather on the open ground a lot in the evenings, the rest of the year, around and about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, roe deer can be, when they bark at you, I've had that at night quite a lot. They know you're there and they just bark and bark and bark. I mean, it's a scary sound. It's raises your hairs on the back of your neck. It's really threatening.
Yeah, quite loud as well. I mean, and then they'll sort of bark, and then they'll do that kind of ow 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 as they run away when they finally get freaked out because they're thinking, well, who is that? What is that thing in the bushes there?
Yeah. I've had experiences in the tent when they've just barked all night. They've come close enough to be annoying and just not stop barking at this strange contraption that's gone up in there.
Yeah, they don't quite know what it is. This weird aliens landed. Yeah. The most horrifying one is the badgers and the foxes sort of early in the year when they're mating, I guess. They're sort of screaming.
Yeah, the screaming of foxes.
My God, when I first heard that, it was like I thought, some kids are being murdered. It was because when I first moved up from London, I had no idea about all that kind of thing. Yeah. So and I was right in it here. And yeah, I would hear that the first time I heard it, it was like scared the shit out of me because it really is like screaming. Yeah, horrible sound, Apparently very attractive if you're a fox, though. Yeah. And the badgers, I think the badgers do it too. I've heard something that was sort of similar but slightly different, and maybe the badgers do it as well. Because we have lots of badgers. That's the other thing. I see badgers a lot here, especially driving home in the evening. They'll just be kind of bumbling along, crossing the road, and they don't seem that bothered. I've had them sort of walking towards me. Their eyesight seems pretty poor.
Yeah, terrible, yeah.
And I've had a really incredible experience when I still had the dog, and amazingly he didn't move. We were walking along. We were up near a badger set, and it was dusk. and it must have been in the sort of early summer, maybe sort of late spring. And I just thought, well, let's stop for a bit. So we stopped really close to the entrance to this set, a really ancient set by an old telegraph pole um, on the edge of a field. Loads of sort of workings everywhere, generations of them had lived there. And I stopped, and the dog just kind of lay down by my feet. And we were the right side, the right side, the wind was blowing away the other direction, so they weren't going to get a scent of us. And we just watched, and this little face kind of appeared at the entrance, sort of sniffing the air. And then out it came, and it was a baby one, it was a little one, a junior cub or whatever.
Yeah.
And then two more came out, and they were just little ones, and they were just sort of playing around the edge, and they'd occasionally look at me.
Wow.
I don't remember that shape being there yesterday, but I can't smell anything, and it's not moving. And they carried on. They did this. We were there for like 20 minutes, and I was amazed. I was equally amazed that I was watching these little badgers play, but that my dog didn't do anything.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Normally he would have just barked or run or jumped and he just sat and watched it with me.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. And then there was a moment when I can't remember what kind of broke the spell, but when they looked at me and they all realised, oh my God, it's a person. Back they went. I don't think an older badger would have stayed out or wouldn't have realised, but they were young. They didn't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was a wonderful moment, or series of moments. Yeah.
Yeah. I love badgers. Badgers might be my spirit animal, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm getting badger vibes from you.
Badger's arse vibes.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I had an experience. I used to go dog sitting in Italy, and I'd experienced some wild boar there. That was the first time I'd ever been actually approached in a threatening manner by wild animals, and that was I was with the dog, and I think it was probably the dog that got their backs up, and it was getting dark, and these wild boar appeared. They didn't run away. I'm not used to animals not immediately running away. They just approached nearer and nearer and nearer, and it became really threatening, really scary. We were against one of those kind of forest fences, so at one point we couldn't back up any further, and they were coming out of the woods closer and closer until they were about like 2 yards away or something. And I was jumping up and down, waving my hands, shouting. That was scary, because wild boar are quite fierce looking, but they turned and went in the end. But that was a great encounter that I survived to see another day.
Yeah, I mean, God only knows what it's like to meet a predator, like a tiger or something that clearly could just take you out, or a bear, or I can't imagine, because it's pretty intense to meet a very kind of benevolent, scared animal. Never mind something that looks at you and thinks, "Oh yeah, maybe I'll eat you now." That must be quite a thing.
That's what
I'm not sure I want to be in that situation, but yeah.
I'd love to. I would. It's one of my big dreams to, and I'd love to see a wild tiger, but to be in a forest where there are wild tigers, just must be so amazing. Just to be there, knowing their presence.
Yeah, it's such a different thing, isn't it? Because my relationship to the land, it's such a benevolent, kind of harmless place. I don't feel like there's anything threatening here. But to be in a situation where there are things that would eat you, that would change it. That would really feel like wilderness to me.
Yeah.
And that's when it tips over from this kind of love feeling that I'm talking about into something else completely. I guess you have to up your game. It gets more real. There's a
Yeah,
sort of,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I would like to experience that because
yeah,
it's pointless even speculating what it's like. It would be interesting to feel it, you know.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it's that's why I'm not, I sometimes I feel that I've got this kind of wishy-washy romantic attitude to nature, which I'm strolling through the wood on a spring morning, and there is all this kind of brutality um, going on, absolute ruthless horror um, happening all around, and I'm just seeing all this. But I mean, it is beautiful. It does result in this all this the way nature is does you do end up with something that is it might be it's not only horrible and it has horrible aspects, but it's also incredibly peaceful and
But there's an integrity to the horror. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't describe it as horror. There's an
yeah,
honesty
that's
to
a
it.
human word.
It's just direct, and it's what you know.
Yeah,
It is what it is.
yeah,
There's nothing contrived about it or
yeah,
malicious. It's very straightforward.
yeah,
You know that. I know what you mean. Yeah, your death is just woven in. It's an integral part of the whole situation.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the taking of life, you know, to sustain and feed and
yeah,
that exchange.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fear. Yeah, it's not all rosy roses out there. Definitely, definitely. Yeah. It's funny what you said about seeing that fox. I had I mean, I'd like to. I had an experience with a goat like that once, which was very, very strange. um, yeah, and very, very intense.
Mm.
Um, and had incredible. I think it had amazing kind of ramifications in my life. I'm not sure it was a goat, but uh, yeah, I had a connection with a goat.
You mean you're
um,
not sure it was a goat? You mean
well, I mean, it was a goat, but I'm not sure what happened
yeah?
after I saw
Tell
the goat.
us the experience then. Then
Well, it's a long story. Um, but I I ended up looking into the eyes of a goat. um, and what you said about seeing all the foxes that ever were and stuff. I had that really strongly with this goat. I had an incredible overwhelming kind of mystical connection, and I saw um, kind of it felt like I saw all the suffering of all the goats that kind of ever kind of been, and all the kind of destruction that was coming on all the future goats. And I mean, it sounds really crazy, but and it was an incredibly tender, overwhelmingly kind of tender moment of kind of connection, um, and I felt that it completely, like you were saying about the fox, it completely understood me. It saw everything about me, um, and just kind of read me um, completely, it could see everything about me, and I, was kind of struggling to understand it. Um, it's and it was such a kind of incredibly soft and tender and profound moment. And something happened. My life completely. I saw this goat, and this thing happened, and then my life went very, very skewed afterwards. I had started having terrible nightmares afterwards, which maybe would have happened anyway, but
Well, you feel like there was
pretty much,
something in that meeting that
yeah, I think something.
triggered that, or did it bring something up that was already there that needed to come out, or what do you think now went on in that moment?
I don't know, and it's. I think it's the. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I from the night of the morning after the goat, I had terrible nightmares.
Morning after the goat. Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. You're talking about terrible night.
Oh no! Well, I won't tell you what the nightmares were, but I mean, it was. It might have been. Maybe it would have happened anyway, but I don't know.
Hmm.
It was.
It's
Yeah.
like a place in you is unlocked, or a level of awareness, or the intensity of the moment kind of breaks through the layers or the sort of veils in front of your eyes. That was the feeling that I had with the fox. It was just like there was nothing in between us. It was just pure knowledge, instantaneously communicated. It was more real. It was like this experience of that moment was more real than all the other moments of my life. It was like as if in that moment I was actually really here, perhaps for the first time. And there's so much going on when you're really here. And perhaps we have these filters are necessary that we can even function, because if you were receiving that kind of intensity from everything all the time, it would be totally overwhelming. So
Yeah.
it seemed like that was just a glimpse, but for me it didn't have any sort of side effects, or it was just a profound experience, and then I carried on, back to ordinary life or whatever. But it sounds to me like yours, like something was altered or shifted, or it
Yeah.
triggered something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Something definitely happened, but at that time, I don't, and I can only think it was, it was the goat.
Goat overdose.
Of all animals, well, because I never really thought I had a great connection with goats. I was more of a badger person, but
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty clever looking animals to me, goats. They have that intelligence in their eyes, don't they? Sort of a
It's
bit
supposed to
a
be. The
bit
kind
more.
of devil is always a goat, isn't he?
Yeah,
Very
there's
cool.
there's that there is, isn't there? There's that whole sort of, I wonder where that comes from. There is that almost archetypal connection with devilry, and yeah, I wonder why. Perhaps there's a sort of look. There's a particular look that goats can have that seems very cold and a bit ruthless, and
Yeah.
almost like
Cool.
not the same. Like a sort of shark's eyes have this kind of dead look, but there's an emptiness in that which seems cold. Whereas with a goat, it's like an intelligent cold, like it knows something, and there's But it could just be a purely visual thing, like just by accident. Probably really nice, nice people inside, but not their fault that they've been given this look that makes humans quake.
Yeah,
I don't know. I wonder. I wonder because yeah, and the whole horns of the devil and all of that. It's
yeah, yeah,
yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to look into. What the origin of that connection is, and that idea of the cloven feet of the devil and the horns, and
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's billy goats. They're pretty horrendous, aren't they? They just scamper around, smelling awful and trying to shag everything.
causing trouble, eating everything. Yeah, maybe they're quite sort of moody as well. I don't know. I've never spent time with goats. I haven't known enough goats to.
No, no. Well, nor have I. I mean, at all until that one moment, which was amazing.
Hmm. Well, maybe we should leave it there with the devil.
Devil.
Something to think about. I'm gonna go and do some investigating now because I'm quite intrigued by the whole goat connection.
Yeah. Well, let me know what you
Yeah,
discover.
I will. I will.
Yeah. Maybe you'll find the answer to my. Maybe someone else has had this experience in medieval times or something.
Yeah, that's it. Maybe the devil's in you. We need to exercise you or something.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see a lot of devil in you, but could be a masquerade. Who
Yeah.
knows what's going on behind that beard?
I'm hiding. Yeah.
Yeah. Ah, well, it's been very nice to ramble around the common, and
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been
yeah,
nice
a
chatting to
pleasure. And I've got a sister who lives down well, she's just moved or moving from Hove a little bit further inland, so in your neighbourhood, really.
you. Right.
Next time I'm down there, I'll come and say hello because I'd love to see where you are. It sounds really
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. I'll show you around. We go to Knepp if you like.
Yeah, there you go. That will be it. Let's do that. I'd really like to do that. Probably going to come down in the summer sometime with the kids and maybe, yeah, that's a great idea. You can show me around Nep.
I will. I will. I'll be an expert by then.
Yeah, brilliant. We'll do that. I'd like to do that.
I'll send you my. I made a little film of hares. I'll send it to you. See
Oh,
what it's.
do. Yeah, great.
You got.
Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to come and see you sometime.
Yes, you must. You must.
Yeah,
We'll do it. This will be the year when that
yeah,
happens.
definitely, definitely.
All right,
Well,
Ben. Well, thank you very much.
Tim, yeah,
Take care. I'll
and
see
you.
you soon.
Bye.
Bye.